Hello and welcome to another episode of Codo Cinema, the podcast show where I talk about movies. I'm your host, Mark Codo, aka Codoman. So, for those of you who are listening, you're probably wondering what's been going on lately. I know it's been a couple months since I did Codo Cinema. I've been pretty busy with work over the summer, and of course, I launched my new TV podcast, Codo Vision, which serves as the spin-off to Codo Cinema. But of course, I'm still around. The podcast Codo Cinema is still going. It's still alive. So that's good news. And so far, Codo Vision has 7 episodes so far. So I launched 7 episodes. So after this episode of Codo Cinema, want to check out my 7 episodes of Codo Vision. They're on Spotify, YouTube, and Spotify for podcasters. It's also on Amazon Music and of iHeartRadio as well. But anyway, let's get right to the topic for this episode of Codo Cinema. Now, you all probably wondering what movie I am going to talk about. Well, I am going to talk about a movie, but it's going to be a little different this time around. Now, instead of me reviewing a movie, I want to talk about a film that was almost made, but unfortunately never got the green light. And this movie going to be quite of a shock. This movie will be the Cats movie. Now, you all probably wondering, Cats? Didn't we already get a Cats movie back in 2019? Oh, like the movie musical adaptation from Andrew Lloyd Webber and, of course, T.S. Eliot? Oh, yes, that one. That one I'm talking about. But I'm not talking about the 2019 Cats movie. I'm talking about Steven Spielberg's attempt on a Cats movie, but this time in animation. Quite a shock, right? Like, yes, we almost got a Cats movie that was going to be an animated movie. Now, before I dive into the unproduced Cats movie that Steven Spielberg was going to produce, I want to give my brief background on Cats. Now, of course, with the 2019 movie Cats, it came out in 2019, December 16th of 2019 at the Alice Tully Hall, and December 20th of 2019 in the United Kingdom and the United States. And to anybody who has seen the 2019 Cats movie, probably already realized that it was panned by critics, and many of whom named it one of the worst films of all time because of the fact that they went uncanny with this movie. Plus, even the film's trailer became a punchline when it first dropped, and of course, with those visual effects, oh boy! But the music was still good. I mean, come on, you can't beat the music, right? Now, the Cats musical itself, which was actually to which Andrew Lloyd Webber contributed. He brought the stage musical of Cats to life. The musical itself came out on May 11th, 1981, and of course, it became one of the longest running musicals out there. Prior to the musical, author T.S. Eliot wrote a poetry collection titled Old Possum's Book of Practical Cats. And the musical itself, which is also based on T.S. Eliot's book, Old Possum's Book of Practical Cats, the musical tells the story of a tribe of cats called the Jellicles and the night they make the Jellicle choice by deciding which cat will ascend to the Heaviside layer and come back to a new life. And as of 2024, Cats remain the 5th longest running Broadway show and the 7th longest running West End show. It follows up with Wicked, The Lion King, Chicago, and Phantom of the Opera. So it really says a lot when a musical about cats remains the 5th longest running Broadway show of all time. and it's in the top 5. And of course, being the 7th longest running West End show, which basically follows up with The Lion King, Mamma Mia, Blood Brothers Revival, The Woman in Black, The Phantom of the Opera, Les Miserables, and The Mousetrap. And that's basically for the list of longest running West End shows. And that says a lot right there. Now, I've never seen the full Broadway show of Cats. However, last year, back in the fall of 2023, I worked as a theater technician for a kids theater production, and the theater production did a kids stage adaptation of Cats. That time it was a kids version, so I was able to work that show as a theater technician, and I just want to say it was a fun experience to do. So there's my background on Cats. But of course, a lot of people are going to remember the 2019 film, but not a whole lot of people realize that there is an animated attempt for Cats. And this segues into Steven Spielberg's take on the Cats movie that he was going to produce. Although it would be interesting to see if Steven Spielberg can direct the Cats movie in animated form. It actually would be cool to see him do that. He already directed the 2021 West Side Story movie, to which got critical acclaim. So I guess it's not too late because now Steven Spielberg was able to direct a movie musical adaptation. So if he could do that with West Side Story, I think he can do. I think he could do that with Cats, but in animation form. You never know. But anyway, let's talk about the unproduced Steven Spielberg's animated adaptation of Cats. This movie almost got made, and it was going to be, well, like I said, produced by Steven Spielberg, but his animated production company, Amblimation, was going to distribute this movie. Now, this information and I am getting, it's from Cartoon Brew, and it is written by Alex Dudok DeWitt. And Alex wrote this article on December 16th of 2019. So I'm giving a huge shout out to Alex Dudok DeWitt for writing this article, and of course featuring the concept art of what Steven Spielberg's take on Cats was going to look like. So huge shout out to Alex Dudok DeWitt. Huge shout out to you. Now in this article, and I quote, "In the flurry of excitement over Taylor Swift, shrunken actors, and the meaning of digital fur technology, it's easy to forget that this isn't the first stab at bringing Andrew Lloyd Webber's hit musical Cats to cinemas. Steven Spielberg, who is executive producing Cats through his production company, Amblin Entertainment, originally conceived of the film 30 years ago in an entirely different hybrid style." And yes, that is true. That is the animated take. Steven Spielberg's original idea was to produce an animated Cats movie. And of course, Andrew Lloyd Webber was set to tag along with Spielberg as well. In 1990, Steven Spielberg became one of the most popular film directors, and of course, bankable filmmakers in film. And of course, Andrew Lloyd Webber was his equivalent in theater. And since its opening in London's West End in 1981, Cats had notched up thousands of performances across 15 countries. And of course, both Spielberg and Andrew Lloyd Webber were reportedly pals. A collaboration made good Hollywood sense. And so it was announced that Spielberg's fledgling Amblimation, which is now defunct, would produce a feature film based on the musical. So, as I mentioned, Amblimation is Steven Spielberg's animated company. Now, of course, this is also a take on Amblin Entertainment, which is the production company that Steven Spielberg runs. Well, Amblimation is basically, the animated version of Amblin Entertainment, if you know what I'm saying. So Spielberg's production company was going to do a Cats movie in animation form. Tom Pollock, who was the president of Universal Pictures, was going to finance the film, and he even said that it's literally a match made in heaven. Both Andrew Lloyd Webber and Steven Spielberg are going to do the Cats movie together. And I believe that sounds like a good idea. Don't you agree? Now, of course, an animated Cats movie was a long time coming, and of course, the musical itself was based on a collection of light poems that T.S. Eliot had written for his godchildren. And of course, according to Andrew Lloyd Webber himself, Walt Disney approached Eliot to discuss an adaptation in the late 1940s, only to be rebuffed. Eliot feared that the poems would become too pretty. Well, I guess Amblimation was not the first studio that would attempt to do this movie. I guess the Walt Disney Company tried to do that back in the late 1940s, although I can't imagine what that would have looked like. But hey, Andrew Lloyd Webber and Steven Spielberg wanted to get that ball rolling in the 90s, huh? Of course, Weber came to write the musical, and of course, T.S. Eliot was dead, and his widow was happy to hand over the rights to Andrew Lloyd Webber, and the show's runaway success paved the way for Spielberg's version. Now, Spielberg himself came into the project prior to working on Who Framed Roger Rabbit. Now, that film came out in 1988, to which Spielberg produced, but Robert Zemeckis of Back to the Future directed the Who Framed Roger Rabbit movie, which was an animation live action hybrid feature whose animation had been done in London. And then, of course, the success of Who Framed Roger Rabbit emboldened Steven Spielberg to launch Amblimation, which is a 2D animation studio that would rival Disney, which was then on the cusp of its 1990s renaissance. Setting up shop in London, Amblimation hired hundreds of staff, many of whom had worked on Who Framed Roger Rabbit and made the 2D feature An American Tail, Five Goes West, to which the film opened in 1991 to middling reviews and lackluster box office taking. So with that being said, not a great start for Amblimation. Now I've seen the first two American Tales, the original American Tale, to which Steven Spielberg was the executive producer, and John Bluth was the one who directed the original American Tale. I liked the first one. The second one's alright. I had fun with the film, although I considered the first one to be a classic. The second one was alright. I mean, do we really need a sequel to An American Tale? I mean, just saying. But at the same time, I thought it was okay. Although, with the lackluster box office takings, not a good start for the company, though. Now, the next movie in line was going to be Cats. And surprisingly enough, it was. And of course, according to one of the animators, Scott Santoro, told Cartoon Brew, I was at Amblimation in London when development first began, finishing up Five Goes West. And then, of course, he also said, and I quote, the heads of departments were treated to seeing the play at the new London Theatre in the West End one night as sort of kickoff. Simon Wells and Phil Nibelink, who had directed Five Goes West, were once again at the helm. Other Roger Rabbit veterans, including Hans Backer and Shelley Page, were brought on to develop the film's look. Now, the small team had big ambitions. The idea for that movie, for the animated Cats movie, was to mix scale models for the sets with traditional animation for the characters. And then of course the artwork itself. I have seen the concept art for the unproduced Cats movie, and I will say this: looking at the artwork is actually pretty cool. And of course, the concept artwork shows you of what the Cats movie would have looked like if it was in 2D animation. And now look, as bold of a move for Universal to do the live action Cats movie back in 2019, I think this is one of those times where it could have worked in 2D animation rather than live action. Because here's the thing. Now, I've never seen the full-on Broadway version of Cats, and of course, I've worked as a theater technician on the kids version of Cats. But the musical itself had costumes. All the actors who were playing different characters different cat characters, were all in costume. And that's not what the live action movie did. The live action movie used the CGI and digital fur technology, and the results of it were so uncanny. The film and the trailer became a punchline, knowing how bad that movie was going to be. Now, look, if you guys like the 2019 Cats movie, that's fine. That's totally fine. I mean, I respect that. I respect that. But it would be interesting to see a 2D animated take on the Cats movie. To which it's real sad that the animated movie never saw the light of day after Amblimation was shut down. And I will get to the reason why Amblimation was shut down. Now, of course, in departure from the stage musical, Steven Spielberg decided to set the film in London during the Blitz. the phase of sustained German air raids during the World War II. And of course, this called for a destroyed environment. In the words of Hans Backer, he recalls roaming the ugliest areas in London, with the musical stage designer John Napier taking hundreds of reference photos for his backgrounds, drawing inspiration from expressionist woodcuts. Backer painted his designs with white correction fluid on black cardboard, and the world began to take shape in the form of 3D sets constructed under Page's supervision. Now, of course, we get the visual development that was proceeded apace. The film hit an obstacle that was built into the very structure for Cats. And following the spirit of Eliot's poems, the stage musical unfolds a series of character vignettes rather than a conventional plot. This didn't set well with the film's producers, who sought to rewrite the script. Unfortunately, things did not go too well with the story, according to Backer, and the project was stopped after 6 months of work, and the studio shifted its attention to another production, which is basically the 2D feature Balto. Although, of course, before Balto, there was We're Back, a Dinosaur Story, which was also produced by Amblimation. But of course, after that one, they went to the movie Balto. Now, of course, the stage musical of Cats was raking in billions of dollars. The film's producers weren't about to give up on the property. And Amblimation, now the animation studio, Amblimation struggled to make its mark, and Steven Spielberg relocated to LA, where the musical was rebooted under a new team. So there was a new team. Now, of course, the film itself was due for release in 1997, but unfortunately, it never happened for that movie. And it's sad too because of the rewrites, but not it's sad too because of the rewrites, and I believe the creative differences between both parties. So evidently, Spielberg and Lloyd Webber did both have a strong sense of just what it is that the public wants to see. They just couldn't agree on what it was. So now, going back to Balto, Balto hit theaters in late 1995, and unfortunately, the film bombed at the box office by not one, but two family films: Disney Pixar's Toy Story and the Jumanji movie with Robin Williams. And this became the final nail in the coffin for not just the Cats movie, but Amblimation as a whole. And Balto became Amblimation's third straight flop. The writing was on the wall. Spielberg was losing interest in the project, and during that time as well, he had co-founded DreamWorks Pictures, which is another pretender to Disney's throne, the previous year, and was now focused on building its talent base. And of course, many of the animators will go on to work for DreamWorks to make the Prince of Egypt film, which came out in 1998. So basically, Balto bombing at the box office was the final nail in the coffin for Amblimation and the Cats movie. So the Cats movie never came to light after that. It's real sad too, because I think the animated Cats movie could have worked. It could have worked, but unfortunately, when you have 3 straight box office bombs, and of course creative differences going on how to get this movie going, it's not a good sign. So there were a lot of problems going on. In Amblimation, most notably on getting it made, and of course, your previous movies not doing so well at the box office. That really is a big red flag right there. Knowing the fact that, yeah, you had 3 straight box office bombs, it's not a good sign, because that studio really lost a lot of money. And of course, it had potential too. Amblimation really had the potential to be a great animation studio, but it was short-lived. It was really short-lived. So Amblimation was folded in 1997, a rare failure for one of Hollywood's top money spinners, and Cats died with it. What a catastrophe. Pun intended. Now, but his 9 lines were far from used up, because after the demise of Amblimation, the rights to the adaptation were bought by Universal. With to which Steven Spielberg had a long-standing relationship. And of course, Universal Studios also distributed three of the Amblimation films, which was American Tail, Five Goes West, We're Back, A Dinosaur Story, and Balto. So technically, Universal still has the rights to Cats, right? So they still have it. But of course, in 2013, Andrew Lloyd Webber hinted that the company was thinking of reviving the project as the new incarnation of Cats took shape, and the composer confirmed that he had written a new song for it. But of course, the screenplay was penned by Lee Hall and Tom Hooper, the latter of whom also directed. Tom Hooper previously directed the King's Speech, which actually won Best Picture. I actually liked that movie too. It was a pretty good movie. And of course, Les Miserables, which is also another movie musical adaptation as well. Which actually that one is actually pretty good too. But of course, this leads up to the release of the 2019 Cats movie, and we all know what went down. It became one of the worst movies of all time. It became one of the biggest box office bombs as well. In fact, the film's budget for that movie was between 80 to 100 million dollars, and it only made 75.5 million dollars. And boy, that is not good. That film really bombed hard. It really bombed hard, folks. And of course, we all know why it bombed, because of the fact of the the digital technology for the fur, and instead of using actual costumes, if you know what I'm saying, right? Yeah, that's not a good sign. But anyway, that is basically the whole story on why Steven Spielberg's animated adaptation of Cats never made it past development. So that's basically about it. But anyway, people commented on this story, and I'm gonna read off a few comments. One person said an animated version would have been so much better than the horrifying CG human faced cat people they decided to give us. That is obviously true. It would have been great to see the earlier version. The concept art looks good. I agree. I was looking through the concept art of Steven Spielberg's Cats for the animated film, and the concept art looks real good. Looks good, and it had potential to be a good animated film. I can see that happening. I mean, if it did go through development back in the 90s, I think it would have done well. I would have seen it as one of the best animated movies from the 90s. It would have worked. But unfortunately, it never made past development. Now, of course, someone said, very interesting. I still remember all the talk about it. By the way, does anyone remember the episode of Tiny Toon Adventures when Babs and Buster go to see Spielberg, and we see in the waiting room Andrew Lloyd Webber in a cat's costume? That definitely hints that Spielberg and Andrew Lloyd Webber were going to make this movie. I never seen Tiny Toon Adventures, but I get what this guy is saying. And someone else also said, too bad the producers didn't think the play structure would have worked on film. I think it would have worked just fine. I think so too. I think the animated film would have worked just fine. Very unfortunate the film wasn't made. I would have much preferred to see this, referring to the animated movie, whatever flaws, over the atrocious looking new one. I agree. Someone else also said, the artwork reminds me a bit of Chuck Jones. You know, like Chuck Jones was one of the animators for Looney Tunes. I think the movie's trying to honor the work of Chuck Jones, I think. That's a pretty good contribution. I kind of like the idea. Having the animated Cats movie not only honor the musical adaptation, but also honoring Chuck Jones as well. Pretty good possibility right there. And of course, someone else also said it deserved to be animated. The idea of a community of cats having a ball and introducing themselves is right out of an early Silly Symphony. Yeah, yeah, that's actually a good point. It deserves the animation treatment. Like, think about it. The live action Cats movie didn't work. It didn't work in live action form, and I believe it deserves the animation treatment. Like, think about it. Remember the number of live action Disney films that Disney is doing based off their animated films. Many Disney animated films are getting their own live action treatment, right? And we got a number of them, ranging from Cinderella to Sleeping Beauty to Aladdin, Beauty and the Beast, Jungle Book, Lion King, Mulan, 101 Dalmatians. Now, I like some of the remakes, but of course, we're getting to a point where we're getting tired of these live action Disney remakes. Like, why are these films getting the live action treatment? They should be left alone. Now, think about this for Cats. Since the 2019 Cats film didn't work, I believe it's one of those movies where it deserves the animation treatment. How about an animated reboot? Like, you heard of live action reboots. Well, how about animated reboots? Like, think about it. What about an animated reboot? If the live action property didn't work, how about doing it again, but this time in animation form? And I believe Cats could be a good example if it ever gets off the ground. Unfortunately, that was not the case. But I don't think it's too late, since I believe Universal still has the rights. And of course, Universal's got a couple of animation companies too, like Universal Animation Studios. Universal Animation Studios has done 2 theatrical feature films, and the two films are Curious George, which came out on February 10th, 2006, and Woody Woodpecker, which came out on October 5th, 2017. Of course, Universal Animation Studios have been doing direct-to-video and streaming feature films, such as The Land Before Time and Curious George, and of course Woody Woodpecker as well. And that's basically about it. I mean, it's not too late. It's not too late to do an animated Cats movie for Universal Animation Studios. Like, I don't think it's too late at all. I think Andrew Lloyd Webber and Steven Spielberg could do this film. I think they could do this film. Or unless DreamWorks or Illuminations can do the film. I mean, DreamWorks is doing pretty well with their animated movies. The same can be said with Illumination as well. I mean, I don't know. You never know. Like, there are some opportunities right there to get an animated reboot treatment for Cats. So there's still time out there to get that rolling. And in fact, if Steven Spielberg is interested, I think he can direct the animated Cats movie. I mean, he's already directed the West Side Story reboot in 2021. So why not for Cats? I think that could work. That'd probably be a good opportunity, and I think the animation treatment would be better than a live action treatment. Come to think about it, I mean, who knows? There's still time, and I believe Universal still has the rights to it. So it's not too late to get to do this movie. But other than that, I believe that's about it. That is basically it. That is about it. That is it on the unproduced Steven Spielberg Cats movie in animation form. So, but anyway, before I close off, I just want to say it feels good to be back doing Codo Cinema. I love doing Codo Vision, but Codo Cinema feels good. I love working on Codo Cinema, and it feels so good to come back on board for Codo Cinema. And I will be running both Codo Cinema and Codo Vision. It'll definitely be a tough challenge to balance, but I will find that balance, especially with work as well. But anyway, to those of you who are listening, what do you think? Did you think Steven Spielberg's take on Cats would have done better in animation? Do you think there's still time to do a animated Cats movie that Steven Spielberg can do? I would love to hear your thoughts. But anyway, that's a wrap on this episode. Thank you all for tuning into Codo Cinema. I'm your host, Mark Codo, aka Codoman. Remember to watch movies and stay positive.